Welcome back to more ReZero. Now, the third arc has finally introduced all of the candidates to the throne, so I want to take a little bit of time to talk about all of them. Talk about who they are, a little bit about their past, and their motivations for trying to become ruler of the kingdom. And I also want to include people that are supporting them too, and do about the same thing with them. So, this will be covering what we know to the end of the third arc. That is chapter 9 of the light novel and the first season of the anime. Now, I will be pulling from a lot of different sources, especially when it comes to the history. So, there's going to be new information, especially if all you've seen is the anime. There's going to be new stuff here. But I'm going to do my best to try to make sure to avoid any major spoilers for stuff going forward. Okay, before we talk about each candidate, let's talk about how this whole selection process is supposed to work. The ceremony is the start of the official race, and they will select a winner in about 3 years' time. In 3 years, the ruler is supposed to renew the contract with the dragon. So they are going to wait until about a month before that ceremony to pick a winner to be the next ruler. So while they're not all on the same starting point, they all have 3 years to make a name for themselves and to prove that they are worthy to rule. And this goes for their followers too. Anyone in their camp can make a positive push towards their side. For instance, anything that Subaru may do would give Emilia more points. And that makes sense to me. They're trying to pick a ruler, and someone that can pick and command competent people is a positive trait for a ruler, which is the reason why that I want to include everyone that's in each camp for this video. All right, let's start with Emilia's camp since we know them the best. Emilia is a half elf with silver hair, which matches the description of the Witch of Envy. And as far as standing goes with the candidates, she's probably in dead last just because of that. Whenever the announcement was made, they handed out physical descriptions of all of them, so everyone knows what she looks like. And because of that, they probably don't have a high opinion of her. Everyone is afraid of the witch, so someone coming forward to rule the nation that looks like the witch is not a good thing. Emilia is a very kind and selfless person. She often goes out of her way to help people, although she doesn't like to admit it. In fact, she will lie about her emotions and her reasoning. When we first meet her, she says that helping Subaru will help her, which is clearly a lie. And then at the ceremony, at least in the anime, she says that she wants equality for all. And then later on in the arc, she says that her reason for wanting to become ruler is selfish. And while we don't know the exact reason yet, it's clear that the equality for all is not the main reason. Which isn't to say that's not what she wants. I think she's just using that as the secondary reason, and she's using it to hide her main reason. And in the first three arcs, she is kind of, how do I put this? Not very useful, in my opinion. And the problem is that she is just too reliant on everyone around her. She doesn't know a whole lot about the world, which she is learning, but she has to rely on Roswaal for a lot of the political stuff. As far as combat goes, while she does know magic, she's heavily reliant on Puck. And in social situations, she's starting to rely on Subaru more. So the relying on everyone so much has made her personality kind of timid, basically, which is the opposite of what we see in the other candidates. And it does end up coming back up and becoming a problem in a later arc. Unfortunately, I can't go into too many details about her past because that would be major spoilers going forward. But what I can say is that for years she lived in a snow covered forest with Puck. And she had a few interactions with people. There was a nearby village that she would go to occasionally. Sometimes hunters would come into the forest. One time the village tried to sell her into slavery. There was even a run in with one of the four great spirits that she had to fight him off. And what she learned from all of these experiences is prejudice and fear and hate. and what people view her as. So she pretty much lived alone in the forest to avoid all of those things. In fact, the villagers even give her a nickname, the Freezing Witch, or the Witch of Frost. And about a year before Subaru arrived, Roswaal found her in the forest and told her about the rural selection and how she was a candidate. And then he convinced her to come back to the mansion so that she can compete. And that is where we find her at the beginning of the story. All right, so here is a map of the world. Now, this is a fan-made map. There was an official map that was released, but it was released for a video game, and some of the points, like the locations, were a little different than what I had in mind. So I actually like the fan-made version better. I'm just going to use that. All right, so let's go ahead and make this a little easier to see. I'll try to trace this as well as I can. This is the Kingdom of Lagunica. So all of this area here. Around here, I think, is Roswaal's mansion. And then this forest right here is Elior's forest. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. But this forest is actually where Emilia is whenever she is found by Roswaal. Her supporter is Roswaal L. Mathers. He is the ruler of the Mathers territory and Lagunica's court mage. Roswaal is eccentric is probably putting it too lightly. He's a clown. He dresses like a clown. He puts makeup on like a clown. He sings half the time. He sings vowels half the time. So imagine Pennywise, who sings to you and throws fireballs at you. Never mind, just don't think about that. He's a nobleman, so mixed in with the eccentric parts of him, he's also very prideful and arrogant. Which, I mean, honestly, he's earned, so I guess it's not as bad. I've already talked about how strong he is as far as magic goes, so go watch the magic video if you want to know more about that. And unfortunately, just like Emilia, I can't really talk about his backstory all that much because it's covered in a later arc. But what we do know is that he wants Emilia to become ruler so that he can kill the dragon. Now, why that is hasn't been discussed yet. So that's pretty much all we know. Puck is a spirit that is contracted to Emilia. He's kind of a father figure to her, and they have a very loving relationship. He comes off very relaxed and playful and goofy sometimes, which is in stark contrast to his titles. He's known as the Great Spirit of Fire, which he got from murdering the previous owner of the title. He's also known as the Beast of End, or the Apocalypse Beast of Eternal Frost, which are... Okay, there's just such cool nicknames, goddammit. Normally, he stays in a small cat-like size and shape, which he can get bigger and change shape a little bit, but in order to do so, he has to draw in the mana from the atmosphere around him, and that causes everything to freeze, hence the nicknames. Literally, him just existing in his beast form causes an apocalyptic event. He doesn't really care about all this royalty business. All he really cares about is Emilia. So as long as she is doing what she wants, he will go with her. Subaru is Subaru. Look, the entire story is about Subaru. I'm not about to spend a whole lot of time talking about him. He's in Emilia's camp. That's all that matters. Alright, I'm just gonna lump these last two in together. Rem and Ram are both technically part of Emilia's camp, but they're kind of more there by proxy. They are servants of Roswaal, so whatever he is doing, they are following along. They are helping Emilia, but if Roswaal decided to leave, it's not like they would stay and help Emilia. They would go with Roswaal. So they're, again, technically in Emilia's camp, even though they're not really supporting her. They're supporting their employer. You could say that by the third arc that Rem is helping Subaru, which is helping Emilia, but it's kind of the same argument. They're both still helping by proxy. So I'm going to include them here to include them in Emilia's camp, but I'm really not going to talk about them all that much. I thought about including Beatrice in on this list, but from the events from the third arc, she does not give a shit what is happening outside of the library. Like people are dying in the mansion and she just chills out, does not care. Well, it doesn't care, but maybe putting it a bit much, but she definitely does not is not going to go out of her way to help out anyone else. So I'm going to go ahead and say that as of the end of the third arc, she is not in Amelia's camp. So that pretty much wraps up everyone in the Emilia camp. So I guess we're just going to go ahead and move up the popularity ladder here. And next we'll go with Felt. Felt is a thief from the capital slums. She's kind of a tomboy, or maybe a tsundere at times. Most of the time, she's pretty neutral to the people around her, unless she knows them. But she is short tempered and quick to use physical violence, which she's a kid, so it doesn't really amount to a whole lot in the end, unless you're Subaru, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot. Belt also has the divine protection that lets her dash at extreme speed. She mostly uses it for thievery, I think, but she can also use it for combat. She uses it with a sword, and it's apparent that she's not super well trained with the sword, but it's still probably well enough that it could handle most situations. Belt is not her real name. Well, it is her real name, but it's not. Okay, this is going to take an entire fucking discussion for me to talk about whenever it actually comes up in the story. For now, I'll just say that Felt is the name that she goes by, but it's not the name she was given at birth. And it will be important later, and it is kind of important now. She doesn't know her exact age. She guesses she's around 14, 15. And the theory that Reinhart has, and I think a few other people too, is that she is from the royal family. So, about 14 years ago, someone actually broke into the capital and kidnapped one of the kids. It was the ruler's younger brother's daughter, which, if this is true, then that would mean that her uncle was the ruler. And along with the dates kind of matching, she does have physical traits that match the royal family. The golden blonde hair with the bright red eyes are both traits of the of all of the royal family. The big issue is that there's no real way to test this. This was 14, maybe 15 years ago, and there's no DNA test that they can do to prove that she is actually royalty. And honestly, I don't think it would matter, even if they did. The people and the rulers of Lagunica have such a hard on for the dragon tablets and the prophecies. I think that even if they could prove that Felt was a Lagunica, then she would just have like a positive note by her recommendation, and that would pretty much be it. Like they're not just going to drop the entire prophecy and all of that just because they found an heir. I mean, I'm sure some of the wise men would probably see this as a setup from the prophecy to put her back into power. And I would imagine some other ones would take the opposite view of the entire prophecy was made so that they can move on from that family line and go to something different. So there could be some positives, some negatives, but overall it can't be proven. So it doesn't really amount to a whole lot, in my opinion. All right, let's talk about her plans and her ideas. So she initially didn't really care all that much about the selection at all. She kind of had to be coerced into even joining. Now, because she grew up in the slums, her view of the nobles and the ruling class are kind of negative. She announces at the ceremony that her plan is to pretty much destroy everything. Now, what that means exactly hasn't really been fleshed out. It could be that she wants to just take down the entire ruling faction right now and establish something new, or it could mean that she wants anarchy. Probably not, but the future of the current ruling class doesn't look good if she gets in. As far as rating goes, she's kind of like next to last and on the standings. She doesn't have a whole lot of positive going for her. She could be a descendant of the Lagunica family, but she's also been raised in the slums. So there's it's kind of a wash at this point. There's no super positive thing going for her, but there's also not the super negative thing that Emilia has going for her. So there's probably the negative that Felt has for announcing that she wants to basically destroy everything. But other than that, so she's probably next to last, or maybe even tied for last. And that's just kind of my guess, though. The only confirmed supporter that she has at this point is Reinhart von Austria. And I gotta say, if you have a short list of supporters, Reinhardt is definitely one person that you want on that list. He is the current sword saint and a member of the Royal Guard. He is the strongest person in the entire world. Not even joking. And I've talked a lot about how OP he is, but I do want to read from the wiki here to kind of add a little bit more context to it. By the time he was 8 years old, the kingdom already issued the Reinhardt Law, preventing him from freely visiting other countries. Literally, when he was 8 years old, he was so strong that him stepping across the border was enough to be seen as a declaration of war. So he is stupid OP. And that's not really seen in his personality. He is very humble. He's quick to prop other people up while downplaying any contributions that he has. And it's not like he doesn't know that he is the strongest. He does know it. It's just his personality. He wants other people to be propped up. And there are reasons for why his personality is like this. And there are lots of stories that I could go into, but that we would be here for a long time. And that's not what I want this video to be about. But there is one story in particular that I do think pertains to all of this. When the royal family became sick with the mysterious disease, Reinhardt was tasked with going to Palladius's watchtower to try to find a cure. Now, the watchtower has a lot of defenses, and I'm not going to go into too many details because it's going to come up in a later arc. But Reinhardt actually couldn't get past the defenses. He had to return, failing the mission that he was given. So after that, the royal family all died out. And I think that he took it pretty hard. I mean, he is the strongest person in the entire world, and he still failed. And because of that, he sees it. They were going to end up dying. Were sick. They were going to die. And there was no guarantee that Reinhardt was going to find anything at the watchtower anyway. But he still blames himself regardless. And I think that plays into why he is so set on helping Felt. When he saw her and realized that she matched the physical description of the royal family and her age matched up, I think he put two and two together, and he really just wants to make up for that failure that he had. So he sees that if he had something to do with the deaths of the family, he could at the very least make up for it by putting one of the family members back on the throne. And honestly, that's just my personal guess. It's speculation. There's nothing that I've seen that have gone into that much detail. So I could be completely wrong, but I think, given everything I've seen, I think that matches. There is one more person that I was kind of on the fence about adding, but I do think I'm going to go ahead and include him in Felt's camp, and that is Ram. Ram belongs to the race of giants, which are, there's not a whole lot left of them at this point of the story. He's pretty relaxed, and he really likes alcohol, so he's pretty much the happy drunk. He owns a warehouse where he sells stolen items, and he's gotten pretty good over the years of appraising items, and Felt has relied on this. Now, Rom's backstory is pretty sad, actually. I'm not gonna go over all of the details, but we'll hit the cliff notes here. So, Rom was a slave. He pretty much grew up in slavery, and because of that, he gained a hatred of humanity. He actually was a commander in the Demi-Human War about 50 years before Subaru arrived. As you can probably guess, the Demi-Human War was a war between demi-humans and humans. Now, Rom growing up as a slave and then being a commander in the demi-human army pretty much solidified his hatred for humanity. He wanted them all dead. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the demi-human war. There's just so much information there that I could talk about, and that's not where the focus of this video is. But the gist is that it ended with the demi-humans losing. So Rom was basically left after that loss, and years passed, and he was given custody of Felt. Now, he raised her as pretty much a granddaughter, and his views on humanity end up changing. His hatred for humanity end up waning over the years, and he credits Felt for changing his mind. While at this point it's not stated that he has joined her camp, I think their family bond that they have kind of hints at to me that he will join, or he maybe even already has, and it just hasn't been shown. And also, the first arc, his warehouse, kind of gets completely fucking destroyed. So he's probably jobless at the moment. So he's got plenty of time to do other things. I think there is enough to say that he has joined at this point. There is one more odd thing that I want to talk about before moving on. The wiki says that he was given custody of Felt by a man with golden hair and crimson eyes, which kind of implies that it was someone from the royal family. And taking into account Reinhardt's story, where someone broke into the capital and kidnapped her, but that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like seeing these two stories connected, it kind of seems more like someone took her out and basically gave her to Rom. I don't know. To me, the likelihood of someone breaking into the capital to kidnap someone is very low. It seems more likely that someone from the family took her and brought her out. Now, it's not stated who this person is. It could have been her father, it could have been someone else in the family that just wanted to get rid of her, or they could have somehow seen some problem coming up, so they got her out of the picture. There's not a lot that I could find that goes into detail on this. And I would guess that a family member did actually take her out of the capital and ended up giving her to Rom. As far as the reason why, I have no idea. I couldn't find anything. All right, so here's who we got for the Felt camp. Well, let's go and move on to the next one. Up next, we have Priscilla Bariel. She is often seen wearing fancy clothes and jewelry, which is actually somewhat important for later arcs, so I have to point it out now. At first, I kind of wondered whether someone would consider her a part of the Lagunica family like Felt was, kind of like a long distance cousin kind of thing. But I think once you see them side by side, they're really not the same. Priscilla has more orange hair, or a little more orange in her hair, and her eyes are definitely darker. And since a lot of people are still on the fence about whether Felt is even a part of the family, there is no chance they're going to consider Priscilla a part of the royal family of Lagunica. Now, Priscilla is a bitch. Sorry, let me take out my personal bias here. Priscilla is very arrogant and self centered and very perceptive. A lot of people say that she has a lot of luck, which I'm kind of on the fence about. Knowing a lot of her history, I kind of question whether she has good luck or not. But it could be that not every situation has to work out for her, but over time, things tend to work out well. And if I'm being honest, what it probably is that she has a little bit of luck and she is very perceptive and able to judge whether someone is going to be of use to her. So she is able to take what little luck she has and make the most of it. And I fucking hate giving that much of a compliment to her. She has good qualities, but she takes those qualities and goes and feeds them to her ego and just becomes so fucking annoying. Anyway, let's talk about her past. And actually, I can't really talk that much about her past because that would be major spoilers for a later arc. One thing that we can talk about is that by this point in this story, she has the title Bloody Bride. And that is because she has been married 8 times. It's at least 6, but I'm pretty sure it's 8 times. And each one of them has mysteriously died. And I put a lot of air quotes around that. I mean, it's not like she was directly implicated in any of these. It's not like any of them showed up with 47 stab wounds to the chest or anything. But at 8 times, you kind of have to wonder. Her latest husband, Raipu, Google Translate says Lipe. We know that Google Translate is 100% accurate 100% of the time, so he is now Lipe in my book. So Lipe here is or I guess was, a nobleman with some power and land. And when he died, all of that transferred over to Priscilla. Which is the reason why that she is starting off a little higher in the rankings. While she hasn't done a whole lot for herself, she still has the Bariel name, which gives her a little more pull with the nobles than the other 2 candidates before. And saying that she doesn't have a whole lot positive going for her, maybe downplaying her achievements just a little bit. Since taking over the Bariel territory, she's been able to significantly help the people living there. Before, their local economy was kind of in the shitter. And since she took over, things have really turned around for them and they've been doing well, which kind of adds some weight to some of the things that she says during the ceremony. During her speech, she pretty much says that they just need to pick her because she's the best. But she also kind of hints that if she gets what she wants, then they'll get what they want. And there's probably some truth to that. Because, I mean, if we look at her, what she did with the territory that she has, she's shown that she can rule and help out people. But I also kind of question whether uh, giving her what she wants will actually give you anything that you want. And part of that is because of her general motivation. Because of how she views the world, she thinks that everything is going to work out in her favor. So, what is there to worry about except for whether she is entertained or not? So, if you are not entertaining, or worse, you are boring or bugging her, there's no guarantee that of what she will do to you. Her supporter is Al. His real name is Aldebaran, but he absolutely hates when people call him that, so he goes by Al instead. Al's a pretty laid back guy, and I've seen lots of comments that kind of refer to him as a bro, and I gotta say, I kind of agree. He's just a pretty cool guy. He's pretty easy to get along with, but he has zero problem fucking up anyone that threatens the people that he's close to. But we'll get more into that in a minute. Along with the scars on his body, he is also missing his left arm. His face is disfigured enough that he wears a helmet all the time. In the light novel, in fact, during the ceremony, he lifts up the helmet enough to show the wise men in order to convince them to let him just wear the helmet so he doesn't like scare anybody. And they agree. So he has not had the best life here. So we're going to talk about his backstory, but the anime decided to cut a lot of this for some reason. It's very important to the overall story, and they're going to have to bring it up at some point. But because the light novel covers it, I'm going to talk about it now. Just like Subaru, Ao was summoned to this world. He was about Subaru's age. I think he says he was about 18 whenever he was first summoned, and he's been in this world for another 18-ish years. So he's about 40 when he meets Subaru. All right, let's go back to the map here. We've got another country, so I'm going to go ahead and try to outline it here a little bit. The south end of the map here is the Volcanica Empire, and this is where Al popped up at. I'm not exactly sure where he appeared, but he ended up on this island over here. And this is Gladiator Island. And as you could probably guess, there is a Colosseum there. And Al was essentially a slave and was forced to fight in the Colosseum. And that's why his body is so messed up now. He was here for had 9 or 10 years, I think, before he was finally able to escape. And he had a little help doing so, and the person who helped him out actually gave him the helmet that he wears now. Sometime after escaping, he found himself in Lagunica, where he entered a tournament hosted by Lipe here. This tournament was actually to help find a knight for his wife, Priscilla. There was about 50 people that entered the tournament, and the way this was supposed to work was that the top 3 or 4 would be presented to Priscilla, and she would pick one of them to be her knight. Al entered, and he lost. But the whole game was rigged from the start. The top winners were people that Lipe knew would be loyal to him. He wanted Priscilla to pick someone who would be loyal to him instead of her. Despite that, Priscilla picked Al to be her knight. Now, this is just me speculating. I'm not really sure if this is what happened, but I would guess that she knew what her husband was up to. And so she intentionally went and picked someone else that wasn't in the top 3 or 4 so that she could pick someone that wasn't loyal to her husband. And she just ended up picking the one that seemed the most interesting, which turned out to be Al. All right, we got to take a second to talk about Lipe here. He was the one in charge of the Dragon Stone. I'm not exactly sure what all that means, but he did know of the prophecy before it became public knowledge. So he decided to go find one of the candidates, marry them, and then use them to become king. And that makes more sense to me because in the light novel, it's actually pointed out that the candidates are not allowed to marry during the selection process. But he got a head start and managed to, marry one of them before they could put that rule into place. Unfortunately for him, though, he ended up marrying Priscilla, and this isn't going to be super surprising, but she doesn't like to listen. So he decides that he is going to brainwash her so that he can have her do whatever he needs her to do to win. But Al doesn't like this idea, so he fights back. They have a little fight, and Al activates his secret ability, and his secret ability is actually really nutty, but there's a whole lot to it to explain on that, and that needs to be a video on its own. But he uses his ability, and it mentally breaks Lipe, and to the point that he is bedridden and dies like fairly soon after. So after that, Priscilla started to rule in the Boreal territory, and he continued to serve as her knight. Well, he doesn't really like knights, so he doesn't consider himself a knight. He actually considers himself more of a mercenary than anything. And Priscilla also doesn't really see him as a knight. She kind of sees him more as a clown for her entertainment. I haven't really seen a reason for him to follow her. I've seen lots of different ideas and theories that other people have put out, but none of them seem super satisfactory to me. It Going by the backstory, it kind of seems like he was just around her enough that he started to like her and wanted to help her. But I don't know, he's probably just like a masochist or something. I don't know. Priscilla does have one more follower, and that is Schult. Now, I know what you're thinking. This kid wasn't introduced in Arc 3, but yes, he fucking was. Go back and watch those 2 frames that he was in. Look, he's a pretty quiet kid. He doesn't have a huge presence or anything, but he is still a part of her camp, so I'm going to include him. He was just an orphan within her territory, and he was half starving when she found him. And she liked the color of his eyes and said that he looked cute, so she decided to bring him back and make him be her butler and share her bed sometimes. Looks, the details. The main point is that she saved him, so he is very loyal to her. Anything that she asks, he will do, even if it costs him his life. One thing I do want to point out is that back when Lipe was talking about brainwashing Priscilla, Schult was actually the one to step up and object. Lipe got angry at him and was probably about to kill him when Al stepped in to fight him. Now, I think Al probably would have stepped up and objected on his own, but Schult was the reason, or was the push, I guess, to get him going. And that is all for Priscilla's camp. All right, let's move on to the top 2 here. Up next, we have Anastasia Holschen. Anastasia is a businesswoman, and a damn good one, but her personality reflects that. She's greedy and shrewd and always looking out for the best situation that's going to help her. Now, for the people that she's close with, she'll look for ways to benefit everyone. But if it doesn't benefit her, then she just doesn't care about it. She actually says during the ceremony that she is greedy, and the entire reason that she is there to try to become the ruler is because she wants to basically climb that ladder and then reach the top. She just wants to have more and more. So that's the reason that she's doing all this. Back to the map here. I'm just going to go ahead and draw a little line to finish off the border so that we can have our 4 great nations. And the left side, we have the Kararagi, oh, sorry, I flipped it, the Kararagi city-states. Now, I think that she has a place around here. There's a city by the water, but I'm not really sure which side of the border that's on. It doesn't really matter. The point is that she is from the city-states over here, and that's where her business side is. And in fact, the only reason that she was even that concerned with Lagunica is because she was trying to expand her business. So that means, oh, well, I need to phrase this very carefully. She has the least stake in the Lagunica kingdom. I mean, if it doesn't work out for her, she's completely fine. She already has her business going on. So I can kind of see that being a negative towards her overall candidacy. All right, let's get into her backstory here. She very much has the rags to riches story. She started off as an orphan, and man, there's just so many orphans in this world. Anyway, she found work where she could, and over time, she was able to show off her business talent. And one of the last companies that she worked for, let me see if I can say this right, Rushika Business Association. There we go. She was able to show off her talent and was able to earn a lot of money. Like, enough that she just straight up bought the fucking company. Now, after buying the company, she renames it to the Hoshin Company, which is in reference to Alec Hoshin, who was the founder of the Kararagi city-states and is pretty much widely known as an amazing merchant. Like, he's an idol to them. Anastasia was an orphan and didn't have a last name, so she decided to just adopt the Hoshin last name, kind of like a status symbol. She's not actually related to him in any way. While trying to expand her company, she wanted to get into the Lagunica market, so she got in talks with the Eucurius family, and at that time she actually touched one of the dragon insignias, and that's kind of how they figured out that she was a candidate. She is actually one of the most normal persons out of all of the candidates. She doesn't have some weird divine blessing or some OP magic or anything. She's just a girl with good business sense. As far as actual like combat ability, she's actually one of the weakest persons in the entire world. The author has said that she is like the in the top five weakest, next to Subaru, Felix, and Petra. Now I'll go ahead and admit that this whole ranking system here is from the light novel, and it's from the Apple Store guy who is a merchant, so he's a little biased here. Probably the reason why Anastasia is so high on the list. But I actually kind of agree with him on this. She has very, very good name recognition. Everyone knows who she is because of how good of a businesswoman she is. So while she doesn't have a whole lot of other things going for her, like other candidates, she only has the business side, but that's really all she needs. Her supporter is Julius Julius. Man, I fucking suck at saying his name. Let's check the Japanese real quick. Yuriosu Yukryusu. That doesn't actually help me out any. I'm just going to avoid saying his last name. Julius is part of the Royal Knights, and he's actually pretty high ranking. Like he's, I think, next in line to be the commander. Julius was born into a noble family, so no orphan this time. And while he was still young, his parents died in a flood. Fuck, I spoke too soon. His dad was actually the nobleman, and his mom was just a commoner. It's very possible that if they would have lived, Julius would have never have had the same life because he would have grew up more like a commoner. He probably wouldn't have joined the guard at all. So there's no telling what he would have been doing. But this is a lot of speculation, and it doesn't matter because that's not what happened. So Julius went to go live with his uncle, and it kind of seems like his upbringing is very similar to Reinhardt's. In the Estrella family, they're all taught to be swordsmen from a young age. And in Julius's family, there are esteemed knights, and it seems like there's a lot of pressure put on all of them to also become good knights. And his upbringing definitely shows in his personality. He's very kind and chivalrous, earning the title Finest of Knights. But he can also come off as elitist, which is the reason why that Subaru doesn't really get along with him very well when they first meet. Julius is a spirit knight, being that he is a knight and a spirit user, and at this time he's actually the only one. He has a contract or contracts with six quasi spirits, one for each element. And sure, quasi spirits aren't as strong as full spirits, but you mix in Julius's sword skills with his spirit arts, he's actually really strong. So he has 100% earned that title as the finest of knights. Now, normally this would be the time that I talk about his relationship with Anastasia and why he's supporting her, but I could not find jack shit. The wiki says that they've known each other for 7 years, and that's pretty much it. And it does say that she was with his family whenever she found out she was a candidate. And my guess is that she knew him beforehand, and that's the reason that she was working with his family in order to make this business deal. I mean, they are close, but goddamn, there's just nothing about their history together. Anastasia has her own private army, which I think a few other candidates do too, but this is the only one that has important people in it, so we're going to talk about it. This group is called the Iron Fang and is probably closer to a mercenary group than anything. They can be hired out to do different jobs like bodyguard, kill shit, the normal mercenary group thing. Except that it's owned by Anastasia, so she gets any excess money that they make, and she gets first dibs whenever she wants to use them. There are four people that are important to Anastasia's story, so we're going to talk about them. You'll notice that they're all demi-human. In fact, a vast majority of Iron Fang is demi-humans, which I think is really rare in this world right now. I mean, it's not to say that other groups don't have demi-humans, a part of the like military force, but to have a vast majority of them be demi-human is very rare. The captain of the group is Ricardo Uerukin. I just like the Japanese version better, all right? Ricardo is of the Wolfen tribe, and he's basically a almost 7 foot humanoid wolf that's fucking jacked. It would be absolutely terrifying to fight against him, which is very different from his actual personality. He's kind of the hype man for the group. He's loud, he's super friendly, and he likes to make jokes before fights and stuff to try to get his people to relax a little bit. He's the first one to run into fights, which isn't to say like he's stupid or doesn't know how to plan or anything, but if he's going to give commands, he'd rather do it from the front line. A long time ago, Ricardo was a slave, and slavery and demi-humans have never shown up in an isekai before. Uh, Seriously, what the fuck is it with isekais and trying to enslave all the demi-humans? At this point, I'm starting to think it's a fucking fetish. Sorry, anyway, one day he happened upon some slavers who were trying to capture a girl. Spoilers, it was Anastasia. And he killed the slavers, saved Anastasia, and then helped her get a job so that she could start making money and get off the streets. They ended up going their separate ways after that, but Ricardo actually searched her out a little while later. And when he found her, he got a job as a bodyguard at the same company that she was working at. At one point, Anastasia had a bit of a problem with some debt that she owed. And Ricardo went with her, and in the process, she dropped a fat stack, paid off all of her debt, and actually got Ricardo out of slavery, all in the same process. And at that point, Ricardo basically pledges his life to her. And, and I get it. Like, they have had years to build a friendship. And he saved her from slavery, and then she, in turn, saved him from slavery. They have a mutual respect for each other. All right, let's move on to the vice captains. I'm actually going to group all of these together since their backstory is pretty much the same. The three vice captains are the Pearlbaton triplets: Mimi, Hetaro, and Tibii, or Tibii, I think is what it is in the light novel or web novel. I like Tibii better, and I want to go with that. Each one has a little bit different personalities. Mimi is the outgoing one and the energetic one. She's kind of childish, I guess would be the way to put it. Hetero is the more responsible one, and he's most of the time he just follows around Mimi and tries to make sure she doesn't get into any real trouble. And Tibii is the nerd. He prefers to sit at home and read books rather than go out the way the other two do. All three of them have the divine protection of trisection, which basically means they can split damage between the three of them. So if one person gets hurt, they can spread out the pain to be less of a burden. And this ends up fucking over the two boys more than anything. Mimi is the strongest one and the one most likely to jump into danger, so they end up having to cover for her more often than the reverse. But because of this divine protection, they are able to cast higher level magic, more powerful magic, as they can spread out the burden that comes with it. But even besides for that, each of them is a capable magic user on their own. Mimi uses earth magic, Hetero uses water magic, and Tibi uses fire magic. So they're strong on their own, and because of their divine protection, they're even stronger together. And a little while after Ricardo joined back up with Anastasia, I think this is back when he was still a slave, Anastasia ended up getting kidnapped. And during that time, she met Mimi and Hetero, who were also kidnapped. But the siblings were able to send a message to Tibi, and he relayed that message back to Ricardo. So then Ricardo and Tibi came in and fucked some shit up. And they ended up saving everybody. Now, at the time, the triplets had a caretaker, Master Roshi. Well, that's His name's Roshi. Okay, there's not a picture, so I'm not even gonna try showing something on here. But Anastasia decided that she liked them, so she established a friendship with them. And then later on, when Roshi died, she basically took them in. Adoption is probably not the right word, but the five of them do see each other as family, and they take care of each other. All right, there's everybody for the Anastasia camp. Let's move on to the last one here. For our top ranking candidate, we have Crusch Karusten. And I have no idea how you're supposed to say her name in English. Like anytime I look at it, it says Crush. Okay, that's just where my mind goes. Now, the anime says her name as Crusch Karsten. And I'm not gonna lie, Crusch sounds fancy as fuck. So I'm gonna go with that. Crochet is very serious and straight laced. She has no problem saying her honest opinion. Most of the time, it doesn't come off as her being a dick, but sometimes she can go a bit too far with her honesty. From a young age, she's been very tomboyish. She prefers fighting and swords, and even now she wears suits over dresses. And these characteristics have helped her become a great leader. She has the divine protection of wind reading, which lets her read the wind and see invisible things just like the wind, which is fucking stupid when you say it out loud. And she uses this to tell whether people are lying to her or not. And it's not perfect. It doesn't say whether what they're saying is true or false. It's just telling whether their emotions are changing as they're talking. So it's easier for her to tell whether they're lying, but it's not foolproof. She's also able to use wind magic, which she uses with her divine protection to extend the range of her sword strikes. And by extend, I mean she can cut anything that she can see, basically. That's how far the range extends, which makes her a great commander on the battlefield. She can sit in the back row, nice and safe, giving out commands while also fucking people up. All right, let's get into our backstory. There are two stories that I want to focus on for her. When she was about 17, the Karsten territory was attacked by a witch beast. Her father was injured during the attack, and she took command to help basically push back the witch beast out of their territory. Now, when I first heard this, I thought it was just some random witch beast, no big deal. You know, it didn't really seem like that much of an accomplishment to me, but I have since learned that it was the Great Rabbit, which is one of the three big witch beasts, and it's thought to be pretty much unkillable. Like, it's just not happening. So the fact that she was able to even push it back out of their land is an amazing accomplishment for her. And at that point, the head of the household, which was her father, decided to retire and pass the reins down to her. And it's completely understandable. Again, this was one of the three big witch beasts that's basically walking calamities for their world. And she was able to not only push it back, but once she took command, there was no deaths on her side. So she was able to not only succeed, but succeed without any major injuries. So it's apparent that she knows what she's doing, and her father recognizes that and made her in command of the household. She's been in charge for about 3 years now, and the Karsten family is one of the top noble families. They're probably only a step or two below the royal family. And with her being the top of the top, it kind of makes sense why she is the number one pick out of all the candidates. In fact, with the royal family being sick, she was actually given more responsibilities to help out the kingdom. So they already think that she is capable of being the ruler. And the reason that the Karsten family is such a high-ranking noble family is because they are close with the Lagunica family, which is the royal family. Crusch was actually close to the fourth prince, and I'm going to butcher this name, Furie Lagunica, and that's going to lead into another important story for her. They met when they were around 14, and he very quickly fell in love with her. But Crusch is, how do I say this? She's very dense when it comes to love. So she didn't pick up on any hints. But over the years, they became close, really, really close friends. And then the royal family started to get sick. He held on for as long as he could, and he was able to confess his feelings to Crusch, and then dying while laying in her lap. The king died soon after, and the wise men took over, and they did the best that they could. They went to the dragon tablet to try to figure out what they should be doing next. And Crusch was furious. What she saw were a bunch of men that were so focused on the dragon stone that they had become callous to the world around them. There was hardly any mourning for the Lagunica family that had pretty much just been wiped out. And pretty soon after that, the prophecy was revealed, and she was actually discovered to be the first candidate. Well, the first public one, I guess. But by that point, the damage had already been done. She decided that if she became ruler, she would get rid of the covenant. The 400-year-old covenant with the dragon would just be dissolved, and the entire kingdom would sink or swim under its own power. And that's pretty much the speech that she gave at the ceremony. Crusch's supporter is Felix Argyle. Felix is playful. I feel like mischievous is probably a better word. He's nice most of the time, but he does like to say and do things to get under people's skin. Felix is actually top notch when it comes to water magic. He's actually the best healer in the entire kingdom, maybe even the entire world. He actually gets lots of requests for his healing magic, and that gets Crusch lots of money and bargaining power and fame, honestly, because he is in her camp. One side effect of his extreme magical healing power is that he's kind of immortal. Like, he's in the top five of the weakest in the entire world, so he's not about to hurt you, but at the same time, you're probably not going to hurt him. His regen is so high that you pretty much have to one-shot him in order to actually kill him. And we see a little bit of this in the third arc, where he takes an explosion, like point blank range, and the only thing that really happens to him is that he loses his clothes, because he, he says that you can't regenerate clothes. So, all right, we have to talk about his appearance. We're gonna get into some fun genetics here. Felix is a demi-human. He has the ears and the tail, but both of his biological parents are human. I guess one of his ancestors up the line was a demi-human, and the gene kind of remained dormant until it got to Felix, which we see in our world now, where a characteristic like eye color or hair color will magically be different than both of the actual biological parents. So this is something that happens now, and this is kind of what happened to Felix. Now, as you can probably guess from the previous demi-humans we've had on this list, humans don't always treat demi-humans very well. So when he was born and they discovered that, they decided to lock him up. He spent the first 9 years of his life locked in the basement, and he hardly ever even saw sunlight. And this is where Crusch comes into the picture. There were rumors about the Argyle family going around, so her father went to investigate, and she went with him. They broke him out of the basement, and Crusch was actually the first person that he saw. He was malnourished and covered in dirt and could barely speak, but she decided to take him with her. In his eyes, she is his savior. So he has absolute loyalty to her, and that is why he continues to follow her. As he got better and got over all of the events from his childhood, he discovered that he liked to wear women's clothes. And in addition to being a demi-human, probably made him stand out even more. And this is where it's probably a good thing that he is following Crusch, because she understands how that is. She would rather wear a suit than a dress, and she would rather fight rather than sit at home. So she pretty much encourages him to do what makes him happy. And he does. And while I don't think this is like a main reason for why he follows her or anything, but I do think this adds a level of respect that he has for her. Now, because he was close with Crusch, he actually met Fourier Lugunica, and the three of them became close friends. I don't think we ever really get his personal opinions on the Dragonstone and the Covenant and all of that stuff, but he would have had a good perspective on Crusch's experiences and why she has decided to do what she's doing, and he seems to be supportive of that. Crusch's other supporter is Wilhelm von Astrea. And I'm going to go ahead and agree with the wiki on this one. Wilhelm is the definition of elegant. He serves as a butler most of the time, but he is still in really good fighting shape. He has zero problem leading the charge against the White Whale. Now, Wilhelm's kind of old at this point, but during his prime, he was considered the strongest swordsman in the world. And even though the Astrayas are basically a family of sword fighters, he wasn't born into this family. He fell in love with the sword saint at the time, who was Teresa von Austria. Now, I could talk a while about their whole love story, but I'm just going to summarize it. So basically, she was the sword saint, but she didn't like to fight. So Wilhelm decided to save her in the only way that he knows how, which is to beat her ass. He defeated her in a one-on-one duel to prove that he was the better fighter, and then he proposed that he take over her duties, and so that she didn't have to fight. And he also proposed to her. And for a while, this works out pretty great. They live happily together. He eventually becomes the captain of the Royal Guard. They have a kid. He grows up to have a kid that is Reinhart. That's right, Reinhart is his grandson. But all good things must come to an end. One time, Wilhelm is out dealing with something. The white whale ended up attacking, and Teresa is sent to deal with it. And in the middle of the fight, she loses the divine protection of the Sword Saint. And due to that, she dies in battle. Now, to some extent, this is normal. The divine protection is passed down from generation to generation within the Australia family. So her losing the divine protection of the Sword Saint isn't really the crazy part. The part that's weird is that it happened during battle. So that divine protection was passed down to Reinhardt, who was 5 years old at the time. Now, Wilhelm is a good man, but when it comes to his family, he's a fucking dick. So when he learned about what happened to his wife, he basically just said fuck everything. He left the Royal Guard and just quit being the captain. He left the Australia family. Like his son's wife was in a coma, and his son had just lost his mother, and he was struggling with all of that. And Wilhelm just didn't care. His grandson had just become the Sword Saint and was being blamed for the death of his grandmother. And part of that was because of Wilhelm too. He also blamed him for it. So he just left everything so that he could search out the white whale to get his revenge. And that was 14 years ago. He still hasn't got his revenge on what happened to his wife. And this actually leads into why he is supporting Crusch. Whenever she found out that she was a candidate to the throne, she sought him out. She promised him that she would help him find the white whale if he would basically support her, which is where we are at the beginning of the third arc. He is serving as her butler and teaching her swordsmanship, and they are looking for the white whale to take it down. Crusch is all for it because that will bring her more fame in the process, and Wilhelm just wants to kill the fucking thing. So that's all of the candidates and their supporters, and I just want to go over a few more things real quick for everybody. The rating system that I used is probably a little closer to the beginning of the third arc. By the end of it, Crusch, Anastasia, and Emilia's camps all get brownie points, I guess, for the events that happen in the third arc. So the rankings are probably a little different at the end than it was at the beginning. Speaking of rankings, let's just go ahead and rank the candidates in order of fighting strength. And this is going to be partly my own opinion. So some of it's my opinion, some of it has been stated by the author. So at the bottom, we have Anastasia, which has already been stated. She is one of the weakest people in the entire series, so she has to be at the bottom. Up next is Felt, and she has a little bit of fighting experience, but compared to the others, she's just not that strong. And I would actually say in the middle is Emilia. She is strong. I don't want to say she's not, but compared to the other two, I don't actually think she's that strong at this point. So that puts second place being Crusch, actually, and first place being Priscilla. She is surprisingly strong, and it's not really shown off just yet, but she's fucking terrifying. My overall opinion of all of the candidates is that they all kind of suck, honestly. From the position of the wise men, the people making the decision on who wins this competition, there's not really a clear winner. The best person that they had, Crusch, just outright stated that she's planning on getting rid of the covenant and everything, which is something they all heavily rely on. So from their perspective, there's not really a good winner at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see the next 3 years and what each one accomplishes and how it changes. So we'll see. I'm really hoping I didn't forget anybody, but I'm pretty sure I'll end up remembering after I upload this video. Anyway, that's it. See ya.